This week's guest is Dru Jaeger, who joins us from Club Soda, which is a non-profit working within hospitality to educate both consumers and hospitality staff about mindful drinking. They believe that sobriety isn't the only answer in terms of relationship with alcohol, but that actually mindful drinking and moderation is also a key way of improving our overall well-being and mental health. I certainly learned a lot from Dru. It was a fantastic conversation. I know I say that every single week, but honestly, the guests that we have on continue to surprise me week after week, and each topic of conversation is unique and full of information. So I really hope that you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you want to learn more about Club Soda, do head over to their website, and thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to another episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, hosted by myself, Chris Hall, the founder of the Burnt Chef Project. This week's guest is Dru Jaeger, who joins us from Club Soda, which is a non-profit working within hospitality to educate both consumers and hospitality staff about mindful drinking. They believe that sobriety isn't the only answer in terms of relationship with alcohol, but that actually mindful drinking and moderation is also a key way of improving our overall well-being and mental health. I certainly learned a lot from Dru. It was a fantastic conversation. I know I say that every single week, but honestly, the guests that we have on continue to surprise me week after week, and each topic of conversation is unique and full of information. So I really hope that you enjoyed this week's episode, and if you want to learn more about Club Soda, do head over to their website, and thank you very much for joining us.
Lamb Weston are your partner in potatoes. We're a leading global frozen potato manufacturing business with a wealth of experience in offering a portfolio of high-end and quality products on a consistent basis. We supply the pub, casual dining, QSR sectors. We believe in wellbeing through potatoes, and we are very proud to support the Burnt Chef Project, here to offer our support and help for those that need it and any solutions that you need for you and your business.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm very well, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I feel like April's been a very long month.
Wait, honestly, I feel broken.
Yeah, that's about right.
So yes, anyway, this isn't about me. This whole episode is about you and what Club Soda stand for and your experience and background. So without further ado, if you could, Dru, just explain to the listeners sort of who you are, how you came into hospitality, and sort of what you do currently as well, please.
Mm-hmm. So my name's Dru Jaeger. I'm one of the co-founders of Club Soda. Club Soda is a mindful drinking movement. We've been going for about 7 years, and we were born out of my co-founder Laura's experiences of quitting drinking about 8 years ago and finding that support available at that time was pretty terrible. We do three main things. We support people who want to change their drinking. So I run all of our courses and programs and workshops for people, whether you want to cut down or quit or take a break or however you want to reassess your relationship with alcohol. That's my role in Club Soda, is that I support people to change. We're also really passionate about choice. There has been, over the past kind of 5 years, a fantastic explosion of low and no alcohol drinks options on the market. And one of the things that we do in Club Soda is help people navigate those choices, find the best low and no alcohol drinks and where to find them. And then we're all about connection as well. We know from our own research and the research of others that actually we change best when we are in relationship with other people who've got our back. So we've got a big Facebook group. We're active on Instagram and other places. So yeah, change, choice and connection is what Club Soda is all about. My personal background, actually, you described me as being in hospitality. Actually, I'm an interloper in this world. My background's actually in the third sector and the public sector as a writer and a researcher. And a policy person. I got involved in Club Soda in the first place because I was really interested with Laura in thinking about what can we do that works. You know, that's really what's kind of driven my engagement in all of this, is that I'm interested in finding solutions that help people drink more mindfully and live well. That has to be the undercurrent for me. in all of this. Laura, my co-founder, actually grew up in a pub. Her father was a landlord, and actually, and that has somehow shaped our priorities in Club Soda. We want to be a good friend to the hospitality industry. There is a lot that's going on in the hospitality industry about supporting consumers to be more mindful drinkers. And we've got some great working relationships with all sorts of people across the hospitality sector who are making that happen. There's this kind of view, particularly if you kind of put the alcohol change hat on, that pubs are a bad thing. And actually, we fundamentally disagree. We think that pubs, bars and restaurants can be the heart of a community, and that connecting with other people in a social environment can be really good for people. And you can do that and not drink alcohol. That's an entirely feasible thing to do. So that's, how I come close to being involved in all of this.
That's amazing. And what is it that you think? I mean, how does hospitality and how do we, as certainly as a nation, have such a? I don't want to use the term reliance, but why is our relationship with alcohol so, toxic? I guess.
Yeah. So if you're going to take a really, really long view of this, we live in a cold, dark part of Northern Europe. We've been brewing beer for the last 10,000 years, and we regularly escape inside to avoid the inclement weather, especially in winter. And then we have this magical liquid that makes us warm and cozy. So, bedded into our culture in this part of the world is a very kind of long-standing relationship with alcohol. It is part of how we celebrate together and how we commiserate together. We use drinking to mark big life events, and it becomes part of the rhythm of our lives as well. I have a lot of conversations about Friday night drinks and that challenge of the transition from the working week to the weekend, and how, particularly for people who are changing their relationship with alcohol, how you suddenly become aware of all of these ways that alcohol is woven into your life really unthinkingly. So, I think in some ways, yes, our relationship can be toxic, but there are very many ways in which people drink which add value to their lives. One of the kind of the phrases that always goes around in my head comes from Professor David Nutt, who's a former government advisor on drugs, and he wrote an amazing book about drinking. And one of the things that he says is that drinking alcohol, above all, should be a conscious choice. And I think that has to be what drives if we're going to rethink our relationship with alcohol, that has to be what the driver is. In Club Soda, we are open to however people change their drinking, whether people want to carry on drinking and drink more mindfully, or want to take a break or stop completely. But whatever you do, whether you're drinking or not drinking, make it a conscious choice, not just something that happens. And I think maybe that's where particularly in the hospitality industry or in pubs more broadly, that's where drinking can become problematic, is when it becomes kind of accidental, kind of a thing that just happens that people don't really pay attention to. Alcohol does have the potential to add significant value to our lives, but we have to put it in the context of everything else. And I think that's somewhere, it's not so much a toxic thing, but certainly an area where we can afford to pay more attention, I think.
Yeah, no, apologize for that sort of that specific word. I guess when you're coming at it from a mental health perspective, you always look at alcohol as the thing that induces anxiety and the thing that we use to self-soothe during periods of, intense stress. And it's no surprise that hospitality, we're surrounded by alcohol on a daily basis, and the culture is to drink, and certainly after shifts, not just to have a quick drink and then leave, but to have multiple drinks and extend it. And I mean, how do you feel that we as an industry can start to move around this particular subject and make it less of a taboo subject when swapping out for 0% or soft drinks instead of that 2, 3, 4 pints after work?
Yeah, well, I think there are some things which are worth recognizing just about the way in which we as a population drink. 1 in 5 of the UK population never drinks alcohol at all. That figure genuinely surprises people. If you are surrounded by people who drink alcohol, you may not notice that there are lots of adults in the UK population who don't drink. Most people don't drink every day. Most people don't drink to get drunk. There is a hardcore of people who are drinking every day, but if you find yourself in that group, it's important to know that you're in a minority. You're actually probably consuming most of the alcohol in the country, by the way. But as in terms of pure numbers, you're in a minority. So there's something about, for me, about how does our workplace socializing become truly inclusive? If you're thinking about a group of people working in a restaurant or working in a pub or working in a bar, you're going to have people potentially from all sorts of different backgrounds with all sorts of different attitudes and life experiences. Maybe you'll have an age range, you'll have some gender differences. You've probably got some different racial backgrounds as well. You'll be a mix of people. Hospitality is one of the biggest industries in the country. It attracts a very wide range of people. If we assume that everyone that we work with has our attitudes, has our beliefs, has our assumptions about alcohol and the way in which we drink, we're going to come a cropper really quickly, or worse, we're going to end up excluding people. There will be that person who always drifts away at the end of the shift, who always has a reason to go home. And that may be in part because they don't drink alcohol, and when the rest of the team is tucking into, after work beers or a bottle of wine or spirits or whatever you're doing, there will be people who are excluded from that. So for me, that culture change is really about being inclusive and making sure that we've got a space where everyone who's part of the team feels welcome. One of the things that we've been doing over the past year, which is important to say, and I guess one of the things in context for this conversation, is that we've been working with the Drinks Trust, who support people in the drinks industry and hospitality and beyond, to provide our courses free of charge for anyone who works in hospitality. So if you are in the industry and if you are struggling with drinking, if you feel that you need to cut down, you need to take a break or go alcohol free, it's really important to know that you're not alone in that. There are really good examples all over the industry of people working behind bars and in restaurants and working with alcohol professionally every day, who've worked out how to separate out their professional relationship with booze and their personal relationship with booze, and have been able to change their personal drinking and continue to be successful in the industry. So I think it's about both those things. It's about being inclusive of everyone, but it's also about understanding that if alcohol is having a negative impact on us, there is support available. And working with the Drinks Trust, Club Soda is one of the sources available that can help you tackle those challenges.
Thank you. And for those who perhaps are questioning whether or not alcohol is having a negative impact on them, and if it's something that they would like to look at addressing, what sort of signs should people be looking out for?
I guess where people are going to feel the impact is going to depend on the person, but mostly I think people notice physical things, a persistent feeling of tiredness, really struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Hangovers are an obvious sign. Although really interestingly, something to become aware of is if you're drinking every day and you're never really experiencing hangovers, you're probably on the edge of alcohol dependence, or you may become dependent on alcohol because you've simply got a low level of alcohol in your system all the time, and it's never getting to a point where you're feeling the negative benefits of it. So disbenefits of it. So yeah, that's something to be very aware of. If you're drinking every day and you're not feeling it anymore, that's definitely a sign that you should be doing something about it. But yeah, you're right, Chris, to point out, we drink alcohol to relax and to calm down, but actually one of the things that alcohol does is it messes with our stress response. It releases cortisol. It raises our anxiety levels. That feeling of anxiety you may have the morning after, won't be just that you may have lost track of what was going on, and maybe you don't know where your phone is, or you've got no idea what you said to a colleague, but actually alcohol is having an impact on your anxiety levels. It obviously contributes to problems like depression as well, sleep deprivation, sleep gets really messed up by drinking. There are all sorts of ways in which it affects us at a physical and emotional level. I guess it's really important to say in that you don't have to live with it. That's the other thing that's worth saying. I think for a long time, certainly when I think about my own drinking, I kind of cherished the hangover as almost like a sign of having had a really good night. It was like something I really, I kind of relished the discomfort and the curtains drawn and the shitty TV and, fizzy orange and mini cheddars, my go-to hangover cure of choice. But, looking back at it, what I should have been saying to myself is, I'm wasting my day. I have a day off today and I'm spending it feeling crap and sorry for myself, so not ignoring the physical and the mental impacts that it has as well, I think is really important.
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things that I've noticed, certainly over lockdown, is you don't have the distractions. You don't have the responsibility that you once had in terms of getting up and going to work because you're sat at home and you're housebound in many cases. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I've had a really strange relationship with alcohol over the last 12 months since COVID kicked in. And over the first lockdown, I was relying upon alcohol to reduce the anxiety and to drink out of boredom. And it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. And this is where the mindful drinking comes in. It was a knee-jerk reaction to, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious. What can I do? I know, let's have a beer. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. I'm sure it's fine. I'm not, it doesn't matter. I've not got work tomorrow. And so I then went on a bit of a, I don't know how to say it. I went on a bit of a teetotal mission and drank alcohol-free beers for approximately a month. And, whilst I went through that process, I realized that actually the impact that alcohol was having on me mentally and physically, like, that first beer after I'd stopped drinking, I realized that I was slower. My brain wasn't working as well the next day. I felt, sluggish. I craved carbs. I craved like these, just crap. And it was at that point I suddenly realized that the impact, the long-term impact, not just the short-term, but the long-term impact that drinking was having on you. And it's made me become more aware. But having said that, if I have a heavy week and it's been tough, I do limp forward to that Friday and I think, have those 2 or 3 beers, takes the edge off of life quite nicely. And then all of a sudden, you thinking, I've just done it to myself again. And so how does one keep mindful? Like, how do you practice that particular skill?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how drinking's changed in lockdown and how there are some particular types of drinking which behavior change scientists and alcohol researchers identify get us into difficulties. Broadly speaking, there's social drinking, the kind of drinking that we do to connect with others, including our partner. There's emotional drinking, which is the kind of drinking that we do to cope with difficult emotions like stress and anxiety and anger, and sometimes to access positive emotions. And then there's kind of routine drinking, the kind of drinking that happens without us kind of consciously paying attention to. So you mentioned the 5:00 on Friday drinks, the drinks you have with Sunday lunch, or the drinks you always have in the garden on a Saturday afternoon, or whatever it is. It's the drinking that just kind of happens. Really interestingly, over lockdown, and people whose kind of drinking is primarily social have actually found it really easy to not drink during lockdown. Deprived of contact with other people just haven't been sitting on their own at the kitchen table on a Friday evening sinking 8 pints of beer, which they would have happily done sitting in the pub with their mates, but people haven't brought their social drinking home. Emotional drinking has really skyrocketed. We've all been under enormous amounts of stress and pressure and anxiety and worry and, just living with persistent uncertainty month after month after month. If you're somebody who's lent into alcohol as a way of coping, alcohol's been there and, that has been, for lots of people, that's really rapidly ramped up. And then it's routine drinking. It's routine drinking, that kind of unconscious drinking, which for many people, over the last year, people have noticed things like maybe the time that I have my first drink has crept forwards. Maybe I'm having one more beer over the course of the evening. Maybe I'm making my cocktails stronger than I used to. It's just that incremental change over time that it's gone up and up and up. So I think it's really useful when we're thinking about our drinking to recognize that it's not all one thing. We particularly when we start wrestling with alcohol, it becomes difficult for us. We tend to think of alcohol as a singular problem, but actually important to recognize that some of our drinking might be social, some might be emotional, some might be routine. And we need different ways of dealing with all of it. The most simple thing that you can do if you're going to start to pay attention to your drinking is to just ask 4 simple questions. And if you sign up for one of our courses, again, free if you, with the support of the hospitality, with the support of the Drinks Trust, if you work in the hospitality industry. If you sign up to our courses, we teach you these 4 questions and they're embedded in everything that we do. 4 questions to ask about your drinking. Where am I? When am I drinking? Who am I with? And what happens? Particularly if you're somebody who's struggling with drinking, a lot of your focus can become very internal and you can start to beat yourself up about the fact that you're having drinks that you don't want, that you don't know how to stop, that you all of that kind of internal stuff. So it's really useful to turn the attention outwards and to think about the circumstances around your drinking. And the questions, those questions that you ask, where am I? When does this happen? Who am I with? What am I drinking and what happens? They're really helpful to put your attention outwards on the circumstances. So just as a really practical example, somebody told me back towards the beginning of the very first lockdown, feels like forever ago, doesn't it? But she was saying how there was this group of friends that she socialized with. They used to get together for wine, once a week. And then when lockdown happened, they transitioned online, and they were doing it over Zoom. And so they'd all bring a bottle of wine. And suddenly she was noticing, actually, I'm drinking the whole bottle. I used to share a bottle with a couple of friends, so I'd have a glass. And now I'm finishing the bottle. This is not working for me. So she used those questions: where, when, who, with, and what. She didn't want to change the who. That connection with her friends was really important to her. And she couldn't change the where. They were going to be doing it over Zoom. So she spoke to her friends about changing the when. And so they shifted their evening drinks to a mid-morning brunch. And so suddenly she's sitting there with a cup of coffee instead of a glass of wine. She's getting the connection with her friends, but she's not feeling the pressure to finish the bottle of wine. And it's such a simple thing to pay attention to the context around your drinking, notice where, when, who, with, and what, and then figure out that you can change any of those things. Taking control can mean making really little changes in any of those areas, but essentially you can begin to design out of your life the situations in which you find it easy to drink too much.
That's very interesting. And there's something when I was managing sales teams we used to teach, which was bums on goalposts, which is open questions: who's, what, why, and how. And so the how is the rugby goalpost, and the bums are the W's on top. And it's a really easy way to be able to remember and, as you say, become mindful. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah,
but I mean,
absolutely.
There's a bit of a curveball with that in mind. How does, whether you're an individual or a business owner looking to curb the alcohol consumption and the impact that might be having to the well-being of your staff or your friends or yourself, how do you go about changing that culture within an organization, or to be able to, because you can't really change the who because it's your team. The why is culturally accepted, and that's what you've always done or what's always happened. So how do, I mean, what are, for someone who's looking at addressing this and trying to make meaningful changes in a business, for example, how would you go about that?
So the most obvious thing to do is to focus on the what. There is an extraordinary range of low and no alcohol drinks available. The UK is actually a global market leader in alcohol-free drink production. We have the most astonishing range of drinks, beers, wines, spirits, kombuchas, shrubs, all sorts of innovation going on in the industry, from mainstream big brands through to independent small batch producers. There is a massive amount of innovation going on. It is really not acceptable. I'm going to be really strong about this. It is really not acceptable to not have good quality alcohol-free drinks behind your bar. Even from a customer satisfaction point of view, 1 in 4 visits to pubs is alcohol-free. If people are disappointed because all that you've got is orange juice and Diet Coke, you are increasing the likelihood that they're not going to come back to your venue. So get your act together and put some decent alcohol-free drinks behind your bar. At the very least, stock some alcohol-free beers, particularly if you're looking at the mainstream brands. One of what my colleague Anya describes as unchallenging lagers. If you've got a mainstream beer brand behind your bar, it's going to have an alcohol-free alternative. That's true for smaller regional people like Adnams, and for people like Brewdog and others. There are good alcohol-free alternatives. And in our experience, and this again comes as a surprise for people, but again, it's borne out by the statistics from retail, is that the biggest consumers of alcohol-free beer are people who are drinking regular strength beer. If your mindset is people who drink alcohol only want to drink alcohol, you're missing a trick, because actually lots of people like to pace themselves and they don't want to switch from beer to Coke. They want to switch from beer to alcohol-free beer. So it's about focusing on the what, providing really good quality alternatives and making them available to people. And you would be amazed that the alcohol-free drinks are going to go a lot quicker than you expect them to. You're going to run out, I promise.
That's quite an interesting one. I certainly found myself. So Brewdog, and this isn't endorsed or paid for sponsorship, but Brewdog were my go-to because I was a big fan of punk. So I bought punk alcohol-free, Elvis juice alcohol-free, and Nanny State. And I must admit they were enjoyable. And I wouldn't say I enjoyed them any more or less than their standard range. But yes, I definitely did drink them faster because I knew that in the back of my head, it wasn't having any long-term impacts to my mental or physical health. So yeah, in terms of sales, if you wanted to make more money as a business and appeal to more customers, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. We did some research last year looking at drivers and the behaviour of drivers in pubs and how it is that drivers drink and don't drink. And most drivers going to a pub told us that they'll order a Coke or a fruit juice. And that feels like such a missed opportunity for a pub to upsell a better quality product, and a product that's going to bring people back, But there's something actually that really important that people working in hospitality can do to educate their customers about the range that's available. It's not just about if all of your alcohol-free beer is stuck in that fridge around the corner of the bar where nobody can see it. Nobody's going to buy it. There is something about having confidence to sell it and to know that people want it and are going to benefit from it. And then, of course, that translates, if you're somebody who's running a hospitality team, if you're running a venue, that's going to translate then to the way in which you can support your team. If you've got a better range of stuff behind the bar for your customers, you're going to be able to have a better range of stuff that you can offer to your team as well. And that's going to help support their well-being. And it just comes down to the really simple thing of offering people quality alternatives that they're not disappointed by and they actually want to drink.
And on that note, do you feel that there's quite a bit of stigma when we talk about alcohol-free beers?
No, I think there might have been. I think the days of Caliber are behind us. O'Doul's is the one that people talk about in America as well. Or Beck's Blue. Every culture has that that, there was, for a little while, there was one alcohol-free beer that was available on the market, and it gets a reputation, and people feel like they're going to be disappointed by it. And that, to be honest, is pretty unfair. And also, it doesn't reflect the fact that, as I say, there is this huge variety. If you're a beer drinker, you can find alcohol-free anything from a straightforward lager to a really complicated porter, and literally everything in between, alcohol-free. And I don't think there is a stigma to it. I think where there is a stigma actually is by, imagine you're standing around with a group of mates and everyone's got a bottle of beer in their hand and you're the one standing there with an orange juice. That feels like stigma, But if everyone's got a bottle of beer in their hand and yours just happens to be alcohol free, it becomes a really easy way of fitting in. So yeah, I think it's not a stigmatized thing anymore. And as I say, more and more of us are choosing to drink less or not at all. And I think it's just becoming part of the norm in our culture, and the more that we can do to encourage it, the better.
I think that's very interesting. And are you finding that any particular demographic or age range are sort of the ones who are leading the charge on this?
Well, there's this kind of idea, isn't there, that younger people, I say this as somebody who's now really quite middle-aged, that younger people are drinking less. That is true to an extent. But genuinely in Club Soda, we have got people of every age and gender and background changing their drinking, from people in their early 20s, genuinely through to people in their 70s, who were choosing alcohol-free drinks and are deciding to rethink their relationship with alcohol. The one thing that I would say is, anyone who is really enthusiastic about alcohol-free drinks now, in marketing terms, you're an early adopter. There is increasing availability in supermarkets and in venues, but there is a lot. There's a lot further to go actually to make alcohol-free choices mainstream. 50% of the population either doesn't drink or wants to drink less. So there is a huge market for alcohol-free drinks, which is really untapped right now. And, venues can be at the front of raising the profile of these amazing products and bigging up extraordinary producers in the UK who are making amazing drinks that people love.
It's very, very well said. I mean, we did a competition 2 weeks ago with Conquer Gym, but they've just launched Bowser. I think you might put them in contact with yourselves. But the whole purpose of Bowser was it was a distilled product, completely alcohol free, but that didn't scrimp on any of the flavors or the characteristics that you would come to expect from a craftily produced product, And so we did a competition fairly recently, and we struggled to a certain degree to get people to take part in this. Whether that was because our demographics sort of more towards back of house than it is front of house, or whether that's just because of their, people weren't that interested in receiving a bottle of 0% really great quality product. But what we found was that those that had entered had produced some fantastic end results that, to everyday layman's terms, you wouldn't have known that it was alcohol free, and the flavors that it had and the characteristics that it had meant that suddenly no longer were you ostracized and made to feel like you were outcast as a result of having a 0% alternative.
Yeah, it is worth saying, I think, that there is always going to be a hardcore group of people who go, what's the point? Why would I fork out cash for something if it's not booze? Those people exist. They're real. They're much like the consumer who goes, why would I bother going to a pub just to have a meal if I'm not drinking? What is the point of that? People do get very stuck in their ways, and I'm not gonna try and dissuade those people. That's not my job. I'm here for people who've decided that they want to do something about their relationship with alcohol and change it, not to try and beat people around the head if they are happy with the way that they drink. Talking of those kind of alcohol-free spirits, you're absolutely right. There is, extraordinary kind of craft that goes into making these things alcohol free, making them flavoursome and beautiful and interesting. One of the really interesting things that we see is actually some of the uptake of this comes from people who are really interested in food and in flavor and in fitness, that actually, there's something about, people who are adventurous and want to try new things, are some of the consumers who are leading the charge in this area. So they're another kind of key demographic to look out for. If you're serving, to be frank, bog standard pub fare, you shouldn't be surprised if your customers want bog standard alcohol-free drinks, but there's a matching, isn't there, of kind of people's ambition and excitement about food and flavor and novelty and those kinds of things, and then that's really easy to carry across into alcohol-free choices.
I think it's a good point, and it's like an old analogy I was given by a roastery once, a coffee roaster, and he said to me, he said, one of the things that many establishments let themselves down on, and I guess this is true for alcohol-free selections as well, is that you go and have a beautiful meal with fantastic service in a great environment, and then you have a really nasty Nescafe coffee to finish. And he said, he just pointed out that sometimes in our industry we just need to pay a little bit more detail and more attention to these subtle nuances and these differences, and alcohol-free alternatives and coffee as well. Get yourself some good coffee. Don't let the coffee let you down. To really drive customer satisfaction, but also, as you said earlier in our conversation, is to get people hospitality staff to interact with new products and expand their horizons, become more creative and more knowledgeable in the subject matters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting you talk about that. Restaurants being let down by coffee. One of the areas which is worth saying, that there is significant improvement, but it's a slower industry to evolve and change, is in alcohol-free wine. There is a really good selection now of alcohol-free sparkling wines, very good selections of alcohol-free whites, alcohol-free reds. There is huge improvement, and there's some really good, interesting products coming through. People like Nine Elms and others who are making really good, interesting alcohol-free red wine, sometimes with herbal extracts and all sorts of other things to add richness and context and flavor, and amazing product. But yeah, so wine is one of the areas where there is definite room for growth in terms of the availability of product. Interestingly, actually, a lot of people who drink wine, when they're going alcohol-free or making alcohol-free choices, will switch over to complex alcohol-free beers. Just a interesting thing to note if you are putting together a drinks menu for a restaurant. Having some good alcohol-free beers, complex flavors, is going to be, a good way of pairing with food as well.
Alcohol-free. I must admit, I had an 0% red wine. And I hate to say things bad, especially on this podcast, but it was awful. It was vinegary and terrible. And as a first entry to a 0% red wine, I thought, oh God, this has put me on the back foot. So in terms of suggestions, like if you were to look for the go-to decent 0% red or white wine, where would you be looking?
Okay, so my two favourite alcohol-free red wines are Nine Elms. That is a de-alcoholized red wine with herbal extracts added. It is complex and interesting, and very drinkable. One of the challenges with alcohol-free wine, of course, is that alcohol adds a lot of body and texture and complexity to the wine. So without it, de-alcoholized wines can be very thin, and can tend towards being sweet or more kind of vinegary. So, Nine Elms have done a really good job of making a very, very good drink based on a de-alcoholized red wine with herbal extracts. The other alcohol-free red wine that I really like is made by Adnams, of all people. You wouldn't think a Suffolk brewer would be making an excellent alcohol-free red wine, but I really enjoy theirs. It's definitely worth trying. But like anything, if you are the kind of person who is 3 bottles of wine for a tenner, If you bring that attitude to alcohol-free wine, you are going to be disappointed, because, to be frank, you're actually not drinking for flavour anyway, right? So let's be honest. You're gonna get what you pay for. So you should be expecting to pay. You should be expecting to pay good money for a good alcohol-free product, particularly with wine, but this is true for beer and for alcohol-free spirits as well. These products have been through the same production process, and then additional production processes to remove alcohol and to adjust flavour and all of these kinds of things. If your view of the world of alcohol is maximum amount of alcohol for minimum amount of price, and then you bring that to the world of alcohol-free drinks, you are going to be really disappointed. So focus on the quality of the product. Think about the complexity of the manufacturing process. Amazing stuff out there, but you're going to have to pay for it if you want a really good thing.
That's a good point. Actually, I spent a day. So we've got a low percent IPA that's called Speak Out, and it's brewed by a company called Bareface Brewing in Blandford, in Dorset, and they brew it, and then 25% of their profits go towards the Burnt Chef project. And we were always keen on doing a 0% version because of the I guess the stereotype in terms of how hospitality sort of consumes a lot of alcohol. But having spent a day brewing this beer and getting involved in the processes and looking at what type of yeast they use out of 15 different types of yeast and all the malt and hops and everything else, that was taxing enough. Then to try and explore how to extract or to get rid of the alcohol from that whilst also keeping it actually drinkable was just, it was, I'm not going to say far too complex, but from a brewer's perspective, it is a lot of additional work, and I think you should be prepared to celebrate that work, and if that does mean paying extra couple of quid, then so be it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are brewers, like Nirvana, for example, like Big Drop, brewers who only brew alcohol free. A whole host of different ways of doing that, from brewing full strength beer and then removing alcohol in all sorts of different ways, to people using lazy yeasts and other ways of actually brewing to a lower strength or to an alcohol-free strength. There's been a massive, particularly in craft beer, there's been a massive amount of innovation over the past few years, and some really exciting brands as well. People like Drop Bear Beer, who are based in South Wales, making amazing alcohol-free beers. There's some really good products around that are definitely worth trying. Particularly if you're in the industry and if you're making beer and you don't have an alcohol-free beer in your range, it's worth reaching out to people other brewers who are doing this already, to talk about processes and how to do it really well. There is definitely space in the market for more innovation and more product, and customers who are ready to buy it. Even people who are doing alcohol-free beer subscription boxes. There's a vast amount of opportunity to get good products in front of people.
It's worth noting. Thank you very much. And in terms of resources for those who are looking at starting on this journey and want to learn a little bit more, obviously they can visit your website, the Club Soda website, and the Drinks Trust is there to support, and hopefully we'll be working much closer with them as time goes on. But are there any other resources or places that people can look?
Just to talk a little to that. So if you go to joinclubsoda.com, take a look at our courses section, and you'll find we've got 2 courses for people who work in the hospitality industry. One, if you're thinking about drinking mindfully, maybe you want to moderate or cut down, and another, if you're thinking about going alcohol free, whether you want to take a break or whether you want to go alcohol free for the longer term. We've got courses, and they are free. They're fully funded by the Drinks Trust. They normally cost 40 quid, and you'll get it for nothing. So you'll get 31 lessons, you'll get a host of tools, you'll get the support of an amazing community, and you'll you'll bring about change. I guess other things worth looking at in the hospitality industry is check out the work that's being done by Healthy Hospo. They're doing great things. Yourselves, of course, the Burnt Chef Project. The Drinks Trust, we're funded by the Drinks Trust. They have a wellness service, and that includes looking at things like sleep, looking at talking therapies. They've got a host of information available, including financial support. So if you're in financial difficulty right now, there is support available from the Drinks Trust. They're the benevolent society for the drinks industry, and happy to talk to people about the support that you need. So do get in touch with them. There is support available. So if you're sitting at home right now, maybe you've been on furlough and your drinking got out of hand during lockdown, maybe you're struggling with the stress of going back to work and your drinking is off the chart. Don't take for granted that you have to do this alone. We in Club Soda, the Burnt Chef Project, the Drinks Trust and others are here to support you to change, and to help you to drink more mindfully and to live well. It's what we exist for.
Great shout out. And I think that all of those services, including Tim at Healthy Hospital, are fantastic for this sort of thing. And thanks. Yeah, great mention. I think combined with all of us, we can start to make vast improvements to an industry that previously perhaps haven't even looked at this subject. So yeah, I'm very excited for what the future holds. But is there any other information or anything further that you think that would be beneficial for our listeners to hear?
Follow us at Join Club Soda. We're on Instagram and Twitter. During May, actually, we've got a whole focus on mindfulness. So do follow us for Mindful May activities. Follow us, and we've got drinks recommendations and blogs. We have a podcast of our own. Do subscribe to that. Lots of ways to get involved at Join Club Soda.
Dru, thank you ever so much, and
thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to hopefully doing some more bits together over the next 5-10 years. Let's
definitely.
Let's keep going. Thank you very much for that. And if there's do go check out that website and check out the great work that Club Soda and also the Drinks Trust are doing. And thank you. I really hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal.
Thank you. Bye.
If you wanted to learn more about the Burnt Chef Project, head over to our website, www.theburnchefproject.com, where you'll find a whole host of resources and information relating to well-being and mental health within hospitality. Whilst you're there, why not visit our shop and support us by purchasing some branded merchandise, which we then use the profits to fund our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental health within the hospitality industry. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.